Welcome to another great conversation on Think Radio Presents Think Business.
Think Business is made possible by funding from the Ice Lab at Western, supporting innovative business in the rural Southwest.
Become a Think Radio Presents partner at patreon.com, and you'll also get access to premium content you won't find anywhere else. Join us today. My guest today is playground artist and entrepreneur Ian Glas. Glas is the founder and owner of ID Sculpture, a visionary playground equipment manufacturer. I say visionary because his creations are not your traditional swing set. Ian and his team build climbing structures that invite kids of all ages to play. And if they also happen to get interested in the sport of climbing, well, it's possible that's what Ian had in mind all along. An avid climber himself, he's committed to giving all kids a chance to give climbing a try right in their favorite park. Ian, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
You know, as I was looking at your story, I realized there had to be a lot of backstory here, because it's hard for me to imagine that anybody gets up one morning and says, hey, I know, let's make really magical playground equipment for a living.
Yeah.
So, fill in the blanks before we get to that point.
Okay. Well, for me, it really all started with rock climbing. So in my late teens, I found rock climbing. I was growing up in New York. So there's not a lot of climbing areas there, but the ones that are there are historic and vast. And so I really got hooked on climbing at about age 16 or so. And it was quite a trip to get to the cliff. And, I thought to myself after a year or so of climbing how nice it would have been for my development as a human to have found climbing at maybe age 8 instead of 16.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll find with a lot of our products that the main activity that takes place on them is climbing, whether it's themed play with a dragon in a castle or a boulder that's, going to entertain adults and children alike. The activity in the vast majority of our products is climbing. It all started with fake rocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
That inspire me to somewhat of an uncanny level. I mean, I've always been an avid climber.
Mm-hmm.
And so really kind of the base level premise for the product and the offering is, allowing or providing the opportunity for youth in communities that have no access to rock climbing or climbing of any kind to get something into their park that is natural looking, natural feeling, provides a pretty natural experience of climbing. And that's sort of the impetus or the beginning of it, right?
Which is kind of the difference because, growing up in the 60s and 70s, I climbed all over playground equipment.
Yeah.
But it was metal. It
Yeah.
was swing sets.
Yeah.
But what you're making is something that actually looks like rock.
Yeah, it looks like rock or dragons or whales or
Right.
castles or fishing boats or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We've definitely, moved into a lot of themed play and always climbing though.
Yeah.
And so, the journey was many years. The thought of a product that would look and feel and climb like rock was something that sat in the back of my mind for a good decade before, I started to get into the climbing industry, and I would shape the handholds that you see on modular climbing walls that were then cast in sets and sold by companies. And then I began to build climbing walls, very typical looking climbing walls, plywood, steel.
Yeah,
Very,
with the handholds
with
that
the
really don't
handholds
look
that-
anything like what you see in nature.
No, and they don't climb much like nature either. There's not a lot of mystery about what you're grabbing next.
Yeah,
Right.
they're even color-coded.
Exactly. So, I got involved in the industry, in the climbing industry, and really that's kind of what brought it. Climbing walls are somewhat exclusive. You're going to have to pay a fee to get in. You're going to need a ride to the place. You're going to need rock shoes. If you're a child, your family or your parents are going to need to be, involved to some degree. And so that didn't really fit my picture because my parents didn't drive, never had a driver's license. There was no climbing gym for 50 miles from where I lived.
That would have been 3 bus transfers and all day.
I grew up in New York, not in the city, but just outside of the city. And so, there I was mulling this over. I got pretty good at shaping the handholds, and I started shaping little models of rocks that I dreamed of putting in playgrounds. And that's really kind of where it started. And that, my first model rock for a playground I probably did in, 1993.
And how old were you at this point?
In 93, I would have been like 20, 21, something like that.
So you've had this vision a long time.
Yeah, a long time. And then I worked with, various companies and that had climbing products geared to go into gyms, geared to, be climbing walls as we all knew them then. There were a few companies with some realistic looking products that inspired me. And I worked for several companies and really tried to push this playground angle. I felt it to be a stronger market than the isolated climbing wall market.
Well, because I want to pick up one of the things that you list on your website as a core belief, core value, and that is that everyone should have access to play. Mm-hmm. That kind of stood out to me, and it makes more sense now that I hear your story that you were talking about. No, a climbing wall is still not access, even if it's next door, because you got to pay the fee and so forth. You're talking about anybody who walks by this park can be inspired.
Yeah, hopefully is inspired.
And come play.
Yeah, come play, climb on it, get involved with the mystery of it because it's complex, multifaceted.
Which brings up another thing that's on that list,
mm-hmm.
and that is this idea of multi-generational inspiration. So it's not just kids.
No, it's not just kids. In fact, I think adults maybe get bit by the climbing bug more easily. Perhaps it's because we've seen National Geographic and, have this sort of romantic fascination with the risk and the danger of climbing. But, you see it with skate parks. It was one of the first multi-generational play activities that went into municipalities or open access. And you see, guys our age, I don't know what your age is, but older gentlemen like ourselves that are in there skating and kids that are just learning on little razor scooters. And, that was inspiring to me to see that. And with that whole, extreme sports liability legislation to reduce the liability of municipalities,
right?
It started to become more of a reality to say, hey, let's put a climbing wall of free access in your park. Because in the early 90s, it wasn't quite like that.
Yeah.
So it is great to be able to go, for instance, here in town to the Legion Park Boulder with my 8-year-old and coach her on the down climb or one of the easier routes, and also get a workout in that entertains me after, 20 years of climbing.
Well, sure. And it also beats sitting on the park bench the whole time.
It does. Yeah, indeed.
Well, so there you are. You're still a young person. You're working in this industry, but you're not exactly happy with it.
Yeah.
What's the next step in the journey?
Well, gosh, there's a lot of factors that have led me to the business and to this location for the business. And, interestingly enough, most of the factors I think that motivate true action are difficult factors. Tragedy, upset that cause you to soul search and come up with something that maybe your personality wasn't predisposed to accept, And so for me, one of the biggest factors to being able to start, run, and grow this business, ID Sculpture, was an accident. a very bad accident that caused physical injury to me, and I was always building these things. I wasn't much of an admin guy, computer guy, design guy. I was always building these climbing walls or park boulders for another company. And when I had the misfortune to hit and kill an 8-point buck on a motorcycle, I was on the motorcycle.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah.
Because the visual there was.
You know, I got really badly hurt. It took me a couple of years to climb again or ride a motorcycle, and I couldn't work with my hands and build, right? And so that I was a valuable asset to the company I was working for at the time, and they didn't want to lose me. They kept me on, put me in the office. I learned the admin end of things and started the design department there, which previously didn't exist. And, you know, because of that accident, it really gave me the possibility to hunker down, refine a vision, take aim, and fire, right? Whereas before I was out climbing, racing dirt bikes, working hard with my hands, and my life was full, and I loved it just the way it was. There wasn't a lot of room for me to sit down for years and try and map out all the different factors that would make the company scalable, and it wasn't really in my wheelhouse until I hit that 8-point buck.
Wow.
So
what a story.
Yeah, it's like I like to call it the buck stops here story.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, why not laugh about it?
Yeah.
But such a common story that some little right turn, or in your case, maybe a U-turn, in what you thought where you thought your life was heading, winds up being a real...
The thing that maybe most shapes your future.
Yeah.
And I think it's finding value in whatever that circumstance is that makes the difference, as opposed to maybe the human disposition is to just find everything that's horrible and wrong with it. You know?
Right. Because that is the temptation.
Yeah.
Is to sort of sink into that and let self-pity take over.
Exactly. And everything's ruined, and I can't work. I can't, you know, and then you just go down the tube. So that was one of the big factors. Is essentially what gave the right circumstances to gain the knowledge that one needs to launch a venture that's going to be mostly on your shoulders for the first few years at least.
So at that time, were you already thinking about, okay, I'm not just in the design department to make this company better, I want my own?
You know, I wasn't yet. No, I was just learning what felt to me like very foreign skills, CAD. You know, my first question when I got into the office after being laid up for several months was, how do I turn on the computer? So that was my start point.
Considering where you are now, that is an amazing start point.
Right. So, you know, that was one of the factors. And then, you know, gosh, there's so many other factors to it. But, you know, ultimately at some point I ended up leaving that company and deciding to move up here and start my own thing. And it was driven, I suppose, by many factors, but, you know, one of them was my mom was very ill and I nursed her to her death. And that was somewhat tragic, you know, as far as your psyche's concerned.
Sure.
And I decided I needed to get away into the mountains here in Gunnison, where I had some great friends with families, and remove myself from, at the time, were a lot of distractions that Boulder and the Front Range offered. You know, I found it hard to focus on one aim. Came up here to sort of reclaim my physical activity and focus on a singular aim, which was family in this company.
Well, and speaking of reclaiming physical activity, have you done that?
Yeah.
Are you
able
to?
I'm able. It's my new 100%. It's been about, you know, well, gosh, now I guess we're looking at, you know, the better part of 15 years since I was recovered enough to climb something and ride a motorcycle again. and I climb fairly well. Not like I did when I was young, but I don't think the injury is necessarily the only reason for that. We all get a little heavier and a little more geriatric as time goes on.
I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So you came here
Mm-hmm.
with this newfound skill set.
Mm-hmm.
What were the obstacles that you faced out the gate to really turn it into something that you could be proud of?
Mm. You know, in the beginning, it was 1 or 2 or 3 jobs a year through clients that I may have had contact with in prior companies that, you know, liked to work with me. And there was really no financial sustenance to it. It was more of a labor of love. I didn't have a space to work in, so I had tools in my garage, and I would build in the backyard or at a friend's cabinet shop. You know, so there was a lot of hurdles. I suppose that with any business venture that doesn't have, you know, investors or financial backing, and the founder not being one that has loads of trust funds or money, it's I think one of the biggest factors in the beginning is money.
Yeah.
Is you know, how to get the job done without having any money come in from it, and then hold out until you're paid.
Yeah, the word that gets thrown around a lot and that I really like is having a runway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
An expanse of time where you don't have to worry about whether the rent's going to get paid.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do to get to that place where you get liftoff.
Exactly.
How'd you get through that?
Rice, potatoes. No. In all seriousness, you know, you kind of weather the storm. You borrow from friends or family when there's an opportunity to pay them back quickly and make money at the same time. And you deal with I had to deal with the struggles of not having a space. And then as time went on and more jobs flowed in, you start to take those risks. Like, okay, well, I'm going to sign a year lease on a 5,000 square foot shop.
Right.
And I'll never forget moving in and all my tools fit in one little corner. There's this whole big shop and no employees and a $2,000 a month rent.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's a lot of leaps of faith that we've made, you know, over the years where you kind of, you know, that you need something to progress, and so you go ahead and get it. You know, Henry Ford said that if you don't, I think it's something to the degree of, you know, if you don't buy the tool that you need, you pay for it over and over again. And so that's been a bit of a mantra, you know, when it comes to setting the company up for success and growth, is getting what you need maybe ahead of being able to afford it.
Well, and that includes employees.
Which we have many of now.
How many people do you employ?
We're at 24 full-time employees.
Wow.
So we have a payroll that exceeds about $100K a month.
Yeah.
And
it's
a lot different than my garage.
No doubt. You're not borrowing people's cabinet shops anymore.
No, definitely not.
Which brings us around to one aspect of your business, and that is that you've continued to remain in this small mountain town.
Yes.
Because 24 employee companies aren't all that plentiful.
Yeah.
In places like this.
You got Walmart.
You know, there are some, but certainly not that you would call locally owned necessarily.
Yeah.
What challenges have you faced in order to do that?
Well, quite a few, as you might imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly, we have, I'm sure you've noticed if you have lived here for any amount of time, we have some incredibly talented people in this valley from all facets. Talented athletes, talented scholars, talented professors here at the school, you know, people that came out of industries that just wanted get away into the mountains, you know, amazing cooks and chefs and
Yeah.
and all doctors, Olympic orthopedic surgeons, and some of
It's
the best
true.
medical professionals you'll find on the face of the earth are here, and so on the one side, we've found amazing people every step of the way, and it's truly a team at this point. We just hired a new guy yesterday that I'm just so excited that he exists. He seems like he's going to be great for the job.
And he didn't come here in order to have this job.
That's
He
correct.
was
I have
already
brought a
part-
few people in,
Yeah.
people that I worked with prior, people that had skills related to our very unique niche.
Uh-huh.
And then we've also, worked to be able to scale aspects of the company with sort of standard knowledge, right? Because it's such an off-the-wall process. We've, made it easier to hire people to fill the shoes of certain departments within the company.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've really just got one or two departments left that the magic happens, right? Where it's really our own process, and nothing you would have learned from anywhere else would apply.
Yeah.
Or very little anyway, I should say. So on the one hand, we've got some of the most talented, driven, unique personalities I've ever found in the world working for us, which is great. We're an amazing team. On the other hand, let's say we want to be at 60 employees in 5 months. That's not going to happen here, not easily.
That kind of growth.
That
just
kind of
isn't
growth
gonna happen.
becomes very difficult. When we're looking for 1 or 2 people, it usually takes us months to find those people. And then oftentimes for every 5 we hire, we're going to lose 1 or 2 in a month just because it's not a good fit, which is natural. There's challenges for sure. I think that moving into the 30s and 40s, 40 head count is going to be a real challenge in this valley,
Yeah.
I think.
Well,
Been pleasantly surprised each step of the
so
way. So
far you're making it work.
Yeah.
And here's hoping that you'll be pleasantly surprised again, because we'd hate to see you have to contemplate moving. Is that something that you're committed to? Would you
Staying
say
here?
Yeah. And I'm not trying to nail your feet to the floor. I'm just saying, put us in your head. You're a local business owner.
Yeah.
You like this community. You like being that guy who can offer those jobs.
Yeah.
What could you say that is in your head about a commitment to that future?
I have a pretty strong commitment to some aspect of the business staying here indefinitely. And I don't have a roadmap. I do have some goals, and they involve significant growth, and I want to contribute more of this to more places. The vision that I see potentially, all of this is hypothetical, but we're moving in the right direction with 20+% growth year over year for the better part of a decade.
That's an amazing number.
It's a painful number sometimes. When you start to get some size, 20% is a lot.
Sure.
When you're $100,000 a year, 20% is not. It's not a lot. When you're doing $3 million a year, 20% is a fair amount of growth. So I think that I think it's a delicate conversation. It's a difficult one to answer factually because it's all kind of going with the flow to some degree.
I get that.
I see the possibility of our more custom, unique projects continuing to be fabricated here, and the products that are more standardized catalog items that are punched out pretty often maybe are manufactured in a plant somewhere that's easier access, easier shipping.
Yeah.
Well,
that makes sense. That brings me to another thing that's on your list, though, of core ideas. And it's this idea that all projects are local. What do you mean by that?
Well, because we do natural play environments, in other words, rock, or maybe it's a lighthouse on a beach in Maine. right? That has a historic relevance to that town.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's a large project, and these are actually projects, a large projects in Salt Lake City where they've chosen to landscape the whole job site with, a Precambrian quartzite that's taken from an island in Salt Lake called Stansbury Island. Then we can come in and, emulate, duplicate that rock type. So there's a local aspect to what's going on there. Maybe there's a mountain like W Mountain that's historic to a town. Then they want to put a small model of it in their park with the W on it.
Yeah.
Right. And so we do a lot of that where we have a lot of animals we sell, turtles and frogs, and they're all customizable to species. When you order, you can say, well, up here in the Northwest, we have this certain type of tree frog. And so here's a reference image. And we would like the paint scheme or the stain to look like this species of frog. So that's really what we mean when we say, we can add a local relevance to a playground installation. Right?
Yeah. Well, and, a lot of parents, their only real experience with sculpted toys like this is that little sort of out-of-the-way play place in a mall.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
These are not those products.
No, these aren't shiny and smooth.
I mean, for one thing, they're beautiful. They're works of art.
Well, thank you.
Every single one of them. When you say we make a dragon, you should see the photographs. Go to the website. Look at these things because they're amazing. And so I want to ask you, who is it on your staff that is an artist? Because all of these things are beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's several phases of that to have it come into fruition, right?
Yeah.
So on the design side, you need to come up with good design for your fabrication team and your artists that are on that team to have, at least a good design to work off of and feed from. So, we have at this point, we have four or five designers, right? And, up until the last, 15 months, about 99% of the designs were mine. But in this last 2 years or so, we've seen quite a few new designers coming up with new products, and it's really exciting. So on the lead in, you've got design, and that's important. And then perhaps more important, is difficult to say, difficult to weigh, but in the fabrication process, there's one step that we call Topcoat, which is where we spray a cementitious material onto an armature, and we hand shape and emboss and carve all the detail into each one of these playground pieces. And that's a very specialized job. We've got Franklin Ayala is our lead artist on the floor. And he and I have been working together for about 16 years, 17 years through several companies.
Yeah.
And we're have a similar relationship to that final layer of cementitious material.
Yeah. So really the better question would be, who isn't an artist in your
in
your group? Everybody's contributing.
Everyone, most of the people that we employ previously had their own gig, like they were entrepreneurs. They were individuals that wanted to, leave their mark or at least have a real say in what they do every day. And they continue to have that say when employed with us. There's a lot of liberties. These guys, they're good.
Well, I don't know. The way you describe it, I think you could go to 60 employees pretty fast because there are a lot of people listening to this going, that sounds pretty dang good to me.
Yeah. Well, good. I like that.
Right?
If this is a plug for anyone who needs a job, give us a call.
We'll go with that. What is your big picture vision? Okay, it's one thing to say I want to provide something for kids to play on, and maybe it's a part of their development. But in talking with you, I suspect there's a bigger picture vision.
Yeah.
That you want to leave the world with X, as a result of all of this labor and effort. What is that?
It evolves. I'll say that first. It's ever changing. Relevant. I mean, there's several answers because because we're talking about the business. I'm going to assume that's what we're talking about, right?
Sure. Well, but no. I mean, don't feel limited.
Yeah.
What's your personal vision?
The vision for the business is to make it. We want to grow. We would like to have more product going out the door. There's two main factors for that. The first factor is the one that's been bouncing around in my head since I was late teens, and that is contributing this climbing opportunity to more and more and more children. We've had some amazing, jobs in these last few years with high publicity, North Face, Trust for Public Land, putting these boulders into low-income housing in Atlanta and bad neighborhoods of Denver and, all over the country, really. And so that's I would like to have climbing in every playground as an option, not injection molded climbing panels, but something that feels and looks a bit natural. So I'd like to have no playground complete without one of our boulders or sculptures to climb on. And on the other hand, there's a unique situation or factor in business where, selling more product does not necessarily mean you make more money. Oftentimes it means the opposite. And there's sweet spots inside of growth that, 1 year you might be doing $10 of business and make $2 profit. The next year you might be doing $50 of business and make $2 profit. The next year you might do $100 of business and make $20 profit. And you go up another notch and your margin drops again. And so based on analytics and looking closely at our process and what it takes to get our product out, I don't believe we've come anywhere near our sweet spot, so to speak, to where, like it or not, there's one singular goal to all business. And it's controversial to say, but it's money.
Well,
and here's my, before you chime in on that, Mother Teresa needed to make money.
Well, yes. I shake my head wondering how it ever got to be controversial.
Right.
This idea that, no, we need money. The landlord really wants the rent.
Yeah. And you want to take care of your people.
Sure.
And there's been years where that's been hard. And so I'd say those are the two factors, is like the contribution and wanting it to be staple. Like every park needs a swing set, does it not?
Yeah.
We know that because it's been drilled into us sociologically for 150 years.
Yeah. No.
But
no doubt.
But so I'd like to see this hold true for climbing boulders.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, partly because, and one of the reasons why I can wholeheartedly get behind that is because you're making art.
Yeah.
These are not just climbing boulders.
Yeah.
We could also say this is public art.
Yeah.
And both of those things are things that I can love to support.
Yeah.
Well, Ian, we're out of time, unfortunately.
That was quick.
But thank you for this conversation and for sharing insight into your business and how you think and why. When we take our kids to the park and there's an IDS climbing boulder there, that's a really good thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the time and want to take a moment to acknowledge the whole team at IDS.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's easy for me to come in and have a talk, but I'm ultimately a small piece of the puzzle at this point.
Okay. Well, hats off to those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Think Radio Presents is a production of Alan Morris Media. The show's producer is Isa Forrest. Associate producer, Aaron Lewis.
Thanks for listening. Become a Think Radio Presents partner at patreon.com, and you'll also get access to premium content you won't find anywhere else. To leave a comment on today's show or to suggest a great story for a future episode, visit thinkradiopresents.com. Tune in next week for another great conversation on Think Radio Presents Think Business.